I think one of the things that we fall prey to is trying to be everything for everyone.
Right.
And not being anything unique and different and doing the same thing that everybody else in your market does. And packaging, if you've got a lot of competitors, you have to stand for something. You may stand for nothing. And so I think it is about knowing who your target is and then spending the time to cultivate the relationship by being curious. I think too often we're trying to get the sale rather than actually understand and know what someone's problems are, because there are often things that aren't the product that's the actual problem, right? It's the
Right.
service that goes around the product.
Hello and welcome to the CX Heroes podcast. Today's guest is Melanie Edwards Virreira. She's held roles at Resource Label Group, where she led brand and go-to-market strategy across one of North America's largest label and packaging companies. And before that, she ran marketing and strategy for North and Central America at Ball Corporation, the global packaging giant. And before that, she held international roles at MCC Label. She describes herself as a strategist disguised as a marketer, a creative with a production brain, and she's outspoken on a provocative idea: your packaging isn't your brand. Melanie, thanks for joining.
Of course, thanks for having me.
You describe yourself as this strategist disguised as a marketer, a creative with a production brain. That's really a wide range of hats, a wide range of sort of labels. Can you take me back to a specific moment or project where you didn't realize you didn't fit into any one of those boxes?
Yeah, it's hard to really nail into maybe one specific time. It's evolved over time, I think, where I got a minor in marketing when I was an undergraduate at Clemson in graphic communications. And so I think that was maybe the first signal that maybe I wasn't just fully into production. I loved the program there. It was very hands-on. You actually ran printing presses, so you became very astute with the actual mechanics, the graphic design tools. But then I had this passion for marketing from the beginning and storytelling. And so when I got my first job at MCC, I was in a project management role supporting Procter & Gamble and doing a lot of project management around the design, making sure that it was print friendly, making sure we had all the details worked out. So it was very technical, but not far after that, I started recreating all of our packaging college presentations, which was the educational kind of event that we held 4 times a year. And so that really just moved me into marketing. Marketing was leading that program, and that was the stepping stone into really this amalgam of both creative and technical all at the same time. And how do you bridge that gap that often exists when you're working with customers that can be very creative but not necessarily understand manufacturing and production, and internal colleagues that might be very production focused but not recognize what is the outcome we're trying to reach, and how do we make sure that those things come together in a way that both parties feel like they can rely on it sustainably and it's delivering on the expectations long term. So I think it's been in my DNA for a long time, and honestly that's what makes this kind of world of packaging so fun, is that you can actually maneuver within roles and within defined activities so long as it's benefiting a customer, consumer, and your company.
And it is this tension, right? This balancing act between those things and being clear about what trade-offs there are. I think a lot of that stuff comes from experience, but it also takes a lot of sense, a lot of taste, right? And that's the creative
Yeah.
side of it. And I think that the creative also, it tends to be underestimated or overlooked as part of strategy as well, because strategy is a sort of a creative endeavor to prepare for the future with a limited amount of information. You also went to the Leeds School of Business, and there a lot of people tend to specialize. Was there an experience there or a thought you had there that sort of made you want to be this role that's a bridge between design and production?
Yeah, I think a lot of those things were already put into place when I started to get my MBA. And I think strategy is something that think a lot of people do it organically until they're provided some sort of framework that they can use to make it more structured around how they think about things. But marketing's such an interesting word that I think sometimes people, especially in manufacturing, can struggle with, because I think historically it was looked at as sales sheets and maybe a website. Then it moved to webinars and then social media and LinkedIn. And so then it's about kind of content. And it is those things, but it's very easy to just push out materials without a cohesive approach to the market and understanding who you want to be as an organization and how you want to speak to consumers and have customers and consumers understand who you are. I always love the Dolly Parton quote, know who you are, then do it on purpose. And I think sometimes, especially in manufacturing, we can sometimes just do and not think about those things and think that they are soft and fluffy. But when you actually think about it, these are like hierarchy structures. How are you different in the market? How do you say that differentiation in a way that resonates? What problem are you solving for your customer base? And then how do you reinforce that in every engagement that you have with your customers? It should be everything from how your website looks, but then how does your customer service people speak? How do you follow up on an order? What does the packaging look like, in this case, that your labels might get? All those things either reinforce who you want to be or detract or muddy or make it or neutralize. And so it's one of those things where the more you're intentional about what you do and the more you make specific decisions around what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, then your return on investment is much more significant. You're not spending as much money trying to go and get to people and explain to people who you are and why they should choose you, because everything that you do speaks that. And so you don't have to spend as much in terms of people and dollars and Google ads and all these things trying to get these people to look. You're doing it in every single engagement. And so I think some of those things there wasn't a defining moment. I think because of the roles that I've had throughout my career, they've filtered into being more strategy, leading marketing, leading production. And I would say that having a production degree and a technical degree helps you speak so much more clearly if you're in marketing or in manufacturing, around packaging, around who your company is. And also speak to people internally so that they can buy into the vision as well, because I think there's so many stakeholders and it has to resonate with them too. Your company has to believe in who you are so that they can speak that language when you're not there giving them talking points.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of if you've ever made like really good tea, you can steep it more than once and the flavor develops over time, right? So the first time you make it, it might not be that good. The second time it gets a little deeper and the third time might be the best. But I think this is how people experience brands, right? Your first interaction, the first engagement, the first time, it doesn't really sink in. You don't really get it. Maybe you catch one talking point or one of the message lands with you or something. But over time, through that experience, through that engagement, the customer journey, it progresses, it develops, it deepens.
Yeah.
And so repeated touches on target, right? Repeated interactions that are consistent, they start to deepen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Just because you do a reach out and someone doesn't say, yes, I want what you have, it's because often either maybe your messaging's not sticking or you don't have what they need, but more often it's because they're not in the buying stage of the customer journey. And so every touch point that's happening along the way is either moving them more towards the buying stage and you being a candidate in that, or not being one of those candidates. And your goal is to sell to people who want what you have. I was really deathly afraid of sales because I was like, they're going to think I'm a used car salesperson. And that was like awful. In college, I was like, no way.
Right.
Sales. And then it became clearer as I went, oh, you're not selling stuff to people who don't need the thing.
Right.
All you're doing is listening to people that need this thing that you have and trying to understand if what you provides a solution for their problem. Right. And if it does, then you can work around the details. But yeah, spending time targeting people who you don't really have a right to be doing business with is a waste of resources and money. And so that's why it's important to know who you are and do it on purpose. Figure out who you want, who you're a good connection with, who values what you have, and then spend all your money going after those people. So it really is a nice symbiotic relationship versus a forced or transactional one.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the idea of a commercial transaction, it well predates capitalism, right? It's just the idea of two people who have a mutual interest, who are willing participants in an exchange. And I think that framing is very, for me, is very clarifying that, yeah, I sell things, but people also choose to buy things, right? I'm not forcing people to buy things. And then working backwards from that sort of reality, I think of the relationship, right? Especially in B2B. In a packaging business, in my business, it's about relationships, because it's not, oh, thank you for buying my box, good day. It's like, we want you to buy packaging from us every month,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? I mean,
Right,
that's what we hope. Well, I think one of the things that we fall prey to is trying to be everything for everyone
right,
and not being anything unique and different and doing the same thing that everybody else in your market does. And packaging, if you've got a lot of competitors, you have to stand for something. You may stand for nothing. And so I think it is about knowing who your target is and then spending the time to cultivate the relationship by being curious. I think too often we're trying to get the sale rather than actually understand and know what someone's problems are, because there are often things that aren't the product that's the actual problem, right? It's the service that goes around the product that they have insecurity around the transparency of where their product is, because if it shows up late and they have a bottling date that they're going to miss, they get fired. Right. And so that's the only thing they're like, hey, price can be what it is, quality can be within a range, but you cannot miss the delivery date. And you can say that you will not miss the delivery date, but what they really want is continued reassurance along the way of where it is in the process so that they can sleep at night and not have stomach ulcers. And so knowing that you operate inside of, let's say, an industry where bottling dates are crucial, like wine, then make that a priority. If that's your target category and industry that you're going after, know what matters to that industry and make sure that you have a support system that delivers on a solution that goes beyond just the product. They need the product, but what they really want is a great experience, not just thank you for giving me something I can get from 16 other people within a 6-mile radius, right? It's like the whole experience is really what keeps them there, makes it sticky, and makes them then refer you to other people in the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I wanted to ask you about that experience and how you approach getting your signals to inform and improve that experience, right? These signals could be usage metrics, it could be voice of customer data, it could be notes from a customer meeting or something, in many different cases. But there's all these signals of what customers want and their voice. And then how do you think about pulling that in and translating that into the experience, right? And doing that as a regular process, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you're engaging with customers, because there's some that are very high touch. They're maybe more enterprise or they're more target category customers where you're meeting with them, getting to know the specific individuals, their business, you're going deep, right? There's different signals that you might get in that kind of engagement than you would in more of a digital engagement. But they're still along the same things. It's just you get them maybe more quickly, because usually things that are happening online are often a bit more like you're getting somebody in the research phase, they're sending out a contact form trying to get you to call them back. And I think those are things, if you've got somebody engaged and they're reaching out to you, that's a signal that you need to start the conversation. It does not mean they're ready to buy. It means they're looking for information about your product. And so what you need to do is find out, what is it they need? What problem are they solving? Why are they looking on your website? What pages did they come from? Oftentimes, if you There's different ways that we can see that someone might be engaging. How do you feed them more information or lead them back to your website so they don't forget about you? Because if you're in a very popular industry, there's a lot of players. They don't even remember names of companies often. And that's the sad thing. You have to have that brand positioning so that they remember you and that the things that you're providing them online are giving value and they're memorable so that they will come back to you as they move through that journey. I would say more on like an enterprise. It depends on how deep your relationship is, if it's new versus existing. Typically, if you're starting to get information about projects, they're moving more towards that buy phase. And so giving them supplemental information about other things that are relevant, industry, anything to keep them on the horn, and you're providing value. You're not just saying, hey, how about that project we talked about? It's like, you don't want to look too over-eager as you're engaging. The point is, you are legitimately and sincerely trying to solve them a problem. I get some people are trying to make a bonus, but if we need to be authentic about why we're in business, and we're in business to service customers.
Right.
And so keeping that at the core of your organization and your team, it will ultimately lead to more profitable, easier sales in the future, better commissions in the future. And sometimes it feels like a lot of hard waiting, but from my experience, letting those signals come a little bit more organically with a little bit of push, I think leads to much more trustful and authentic relationships in the long run.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that there is a obvious bias towards the short term and the measurable, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But the strategic, the relationship building, these are often hard to put a deadline on. And the results, they may be harder to quantify, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge, right? I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about today specifically was, let's say you have these customer signals coming in. Let's say, for example, that they're very clear. Then how do you actually bring the team together and herd the cats, right? Sort of, how do you get everybody to be pulling in the same direction, understanding the gaps when there's all these different stakeholders with different objectives?
Yeah, I think back to a lot of enterprise accounts that I've worked on that are large organizations that have a lot of individual kind of organizational pillars and business excellence that you're trying to bring together. Oftentimes these are relationships that already exist, but there's always that ongoing business, either growth in business or improving the way the business is done. And often if you've got a big company, you can kind of zipper those people together. So you put quality people with quality people, manufacturing people with manufacturing people, marketing, so that they're speaking the same language. And often you want these touch points, again, that are proactive. Every single one of those people have different goals and objectives and ways that they earn a bonus, and they often are not aligned, and it's all kinds of chaos. So the idea is whoever's in charge of that account is responsible for arming the team with the information that they need. Your job as a advocate for the customer internally is that people understand your customer, they know the needs and the pain points that they have, you've elevated their concerns. Oftentimes these concerns are not just unique to them, they're systemic within your organization. And so you're working on action plans to not only respond to the specific things, but also create real root cause, which helps everybody that you do business with. And bringing them together in more sort of quarterly review type of exchanges where you have all the right people in the room. But I would say some of the more impactful meetings that I've had, especially being more the bridge between technical and creative, is some of these, we call them ideation and innovation meetings, but I think those can be all kinds of different things that people bring along. I think it's really easy to just kind of do the dog and pony tap dance of here's all the stuff we make. And I think it's a missed opportunity for companies to assume that your customer understands that product and capability in the same way and can connect the dots and apply that to their own product. It's a stretch. It honestly is very rarely done because often they don't hire from within our industry and bring them in. And so they get it, but they don't really get it. And so when I was working for CTI, the Innovative Ink Company, thermochromic ink was such a big part of our portfolio. And everybody kind of gets it a little bit because the Coors Mountains turn blue. So it's, oh, I got it. When it's at a certain temperature, it turns blue. And it's, yeah, but is your brand about cold, refreshing, Rocky Mountains, snow melting? Okay, then that's probably not the way you want to apply it because otherwise it's just going to look gimmicky and they're going to think you're copying. So rather than saying, hey, printer XYZ, can you talk about thermochromic inks with your customer, which they then dutifully put it as a bullet point in their innovation slide and show a couple samples. You take it, you say, hey, give me a challenge statement. What's going on with your brand? Is there a consumer problem? Is there some kind of message you're trying to send? Are you trying to differentiate from this huge proliferation of SKUs in your category and you're trying to stand out? And then taking information about that customer's brand, taking the technology and then intentionally applying it in a way that reinforces what they're trying to do. Those are the meetings that have been most successful. And one of the customers that I felt did it the best was way back in the day, Coors, back when Coors and Miller combined and it was Miller Coors. They did such a great job of bringing their suppliers in. They had very clear consumer research, a consumer pain point, and the challenge was suppliers worked together in teams and solved how to approach this issue they were having. And so now you've actually got the whole packaging work stream working together and solving the problem. And the solutions were brilliant. There's a list of solutions that came out of that ended up getting deployed. And Coors was one of the biggest growing brands for decades when they were doing those.
That's really interesting. As you were talking about this, I thought of the parallels between marketing and GTM, modern GTM, as something distinct from or a subset of marketing. I think of also a new parallel between sort of customer-facing customer experience and GTC, go to customer, go to them, meet them where they are, and then scale that, right? And take it straight from the customers, from the lips of the customer, like from their voice directly to the ear of the person who can take action in the business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the size of that gap, that's the speed of iteration of the business. That's the speed of evolution of the business as well, right there. And one of the things that you've touched on before this recording, but I wanted to ask you about on the call is when you look at the manufacturing and the distribution industry for packaging, what do you think are the perennial hurdles? What are the recurring points of friction? Why does this industry seem like it's maybe a little slower to adopt some of the new technology?
Yeah, and I think probably a lot of manufacturing is the same. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's just packaging, but I think because manufacturing is so tangible and there's these big assets that it's something that you're actually physically creating something, it's easy to not be on not even the bleeding edge, but the leading edge of technology. It's not a requirement to keep the lights on and keep the business running. Those requirements are very easy to be seen. It's ERPs, CRM maybe, hopefully. You've got a website, but does it connect to anything? There's the basic stuff that are required things to play. But anything that's a nice to have in the minds of the reviewers of the dollars are often sacrificed so that you can maintain your equipment, you can have better cash flow, like all those things. And rightfully right, you have to be good stewards of money and funding. But I think what happened is that it kind of got behind on a lot of progress. And what you find is that the longer you wait to do things and technology continues along its journey, the harder it is actually to go back and fix all the foundational stuff. And so anyone who's had to deal with ERP updates will know, but also things like connecting your CRM, your Salesforce to your ERP. When your data doesn't match, it is a nightmare. Customer naming is very important. Who knew? And so you uncover these things, and prior to really this past year, updating your naming conventions for your customers is a nightmare. And if you have multiple locations that got acquired, product numbers and how you do your bombs and how you do your specifications, these things, they don't match because they were different companies. And being thoughtful about how you integrate up front and having a plan is really important because it just compounds. However, with AI coming along and doing its merry business, it does actually help, I think, or will help allow the industry to jump a lot of stages that were avoided or intentionally chosen not to invest in, because it can go and actually help you with naming conventions and get your data cleaned up. And prior to that, it was just a manual slog. And so I do think that this era where we're getting into AI will really help move things along. And I think the industry will still struggle around how to deploy technology in a way that treats B2B like B2C. Because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. We all use the same apps, and we want and desire and expect that kind of experience. And I will say I have not come along in my spheres that I have worked in where anyone has made that leap to create a consumer-like experience for a business. And I can tell you that it would be absolutely meaningful. I will say, with the exception of some of the quick turn stuff, they've done a good job of having sort of consumer interfaces, but it's got to be something small. When you get to the complexity of like large scale volumes that are more difficult, it's not just quick, like easy, you can get all the information you need, because none of those systems historically have been connected. And so it's hard to, you don't want to display inaccurate information or have these interfaces that are broken, don't work right. And so you do have to get it right before you can really start to create that really great consumer-like experience.
Absolutely. I think there's this sort of continual cycle of experiences becoming more hands-off and then becoming more hands-on again. And I think we're on the trend right now, very much so, of some elements or some experiences becoming more hands-off, as in more do-it-yourself. And this relates directly to the ease of doing business, right? And I think today, especially for the American consumer, or let's say the American business person, right? If you're dealing with B2B customers, the individuals inside those organizations, we value convenience very highly, right? Convenience has an extremely high value, and we're also quite willing to do it ourselves, right? As Americans, we love a good DIY project. And so I think those two things combine in a perfect storm for a lot of the current iteration of AI tools, right? Because you can come in and you can solve the problem yourself. It's very easy, it's very frictionless. But to your point, how do you prepare your organization to get the knowledge together, to get the data plumbing lined up, to have the foundation for an actual good experience, right? And those are some of the tricky things that a lot of organizations struggle with. But that is the thing to lean into, in my opinion. What would you say, looking towards the future, looking towards the horizon here, what would you say are some things for people to focus on, maybe some questions to ask inside of their team, just uncover the gap and hopefully to close it?
You know, I always look at things as like, what is adding value? What is just moving things along? And an interesting situation that's happened in label printing with, I would say, just the absolute adoption of digital printing, which has been an amazing addition to the industry because it closes a gap where you can really create small runs but still have all of the amazing things that you typically could only get with more larger commercial equipment. The problem with kind of the evolution post digital printing is that I think in the minds of our customers is that, oh, here's your file and you push print and out comes my label. And actually the complexity has only gotten more over the years, less. These things are still manufactured items pulling different materials together and different inks, and they behave differently, and different printing presses produce things differently. There's still that sort of tolerance that is underappreciated in this day and age. I think the problem with that is that what you're going to end up, again, with that owning the outcome, is that honestly everybody ends up sacrificing. The printer is running around moving and manipulating and changing plates when they're trying to run on a first production run. The customer's been there for hours, the inks aren't quite right, the material's not printing the way that we thought it would, the customer's kind of tweaking colors. It ends up something that should have taken 3 or 4 hours is now 8 or 9, right? And when you're running these large assets, efficiency is key. So you need those things off. So production people do not like, because they slow them down and it's hard to narrow in on what people want. Whereas the customer's sitting there thinking, this isn't what I wanted. It doesn't look like the proof. It doesn't look like what we talked about. My designer said it was going to look like this, and they made this beautiful mock-up over here. And so there's just all these things that are happening, and everybody's just tense on that first run, right? And then eventually you arrive at a conclusion. You're like, okay, fine. It's 2 a.m. I'm signing off on this. And off it goes. And that's the proof that will match forevermore until there's a redesign. And hopefully everybody just said, okay, fine, we're good. Hopefully it sailed. That's a pain point. That is absolutely a pain point that we need to acknowledge and recognize. And how do you allow for the process to help work out those gaps, and you streamline the non-value added things that are sitting in the background that everybody's actually spending their time doing,
right?
That takes forever. Like putting in the order, like making sure the invoices are paid, sure the file is getting moved out. It's like all these things that can be automated and should be automated because they aren't adding any value whatsoever, are actually where we have to manually adjust and fix and run around. But the thing that actually would be better is if we spent all of our time making sure that we're aligning on expectations, we're doing what we can to minimize the risk of what happens when we actually put the thing on press. And so that's where I would spend my time, is saying what needs to happen to streamline just the jumps between steps. And often that comes at getting that base data cleaned up and having processes that are written down and that are repeatable and that are consistent, because you can't actually systematize anything if those things have not been done. And that is the heavy lift that gets harder and harder the bigger you get, the longer you wait on it, and it is painful. But I think AI is going to help us reduce some of the pain that I think kept people from embarking on that journey for so long.
Absolutely, yeah. I think of the data question as like a plumbing metaphor. I like to often talk about data plumbing, which is connecting two different systems, right? Or more. But I think also of what are the things that people are doing manually today that they really shouldn't be, right? If you're copying data from one place and then pasting it into a spreadsheet somewhere else, you're like carrying the data bucket, right? It's like the bucket of water that you're carrying by hand. And if you carry it by hand enough days in a row, it's build a pipe, right?
It's like, why do people build pipes?
Yeah. So I use that analogy, but I think the reason I like it is because I think it highlights how ridiculous a lot of the things are that we're actually doing in light of what is possible today. And I also think that what is possible today is so much more approachable than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can run a pilot, you can run a proof of concept, you can spin up like a quick prototype. Like, you can do a lot of these things and prove it in a very low stakes way. And it's very accessible. Yeah. It used to be so technical and so specific and so specialized, but now AI can break it down and you can get going. So there's that aspect. And then to your point also about the knowledge part, right? You have to have it written down.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of a reframe. It takes a bit of a rethink, because a lot of organizations, they might be, everything's done by phone, or it's all in email threads that are not tracked anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And I'm biased because that's what I'm involved in, but I think building the knowledge base is the sort of fundamental practice of the modern organization in many respects, because it powers up everything and it's that conduit from the voice of the customer to the business improvement. So anyway, I don't want to go on that, but I think that the way that you're thinking about it is spot on. And I hope people will take your advice to heart that there is opportunity here. And just because it's manufacturing doesn't mean that you have to run away from these things or consider them as completely optional. It's actually an opportunity that people can lean into and get a new advantage from.
That's the framing that I would say, is that because for so long the industry's kind of just been slowly picking away at technology, it's actually an opportunity to be a differentiating value for your company, because the bar is pretty low in the industry. People, from like a one-on-one relationship, I think it's good. It's like that has been cultivated within the industry for many decades. But taking this leap and saying we're going to put customer experience as a top priority, and because we've already defined who we want to be and who our target market are that appreciate this stuff, we're going to say what is the thing that they value the most from an experience, and we prioritize that first. Because there's a gazillion things that you could do to make your experience better. A gazillion. It is endless. So that's why you have to know what you're trying to do. Like, what is the end goal? Where are you headed? So that you can prioritize those things appropriately, so that you're spending your money and your resources in the right way. Because as much as we like to just bring in consultants or AI, like there still has to be these people that intimately understand your business and like where all the things are hidden, and oh, you have to call Joe to get that done. Someone has to know to call Joe. And so that's the way you make sure that you're solving the right problem, you're solving it the correct way, and you're solving it with the customer in mind, and not just, oh, well, this is probably would be good. You know, what do they need? What is their biggest problem? And solve that first, and then go down the list.
Yeah, absolutely. It should all be calculated back from what the customer wants, right? From what the customer has said directly. And also, I think from observing behavior,
Yes.
right? And so a lot of the nonverbal stuff, if you have like an order frequency over time, if you have account data, if you have a digital experience, you're going to have all kinds of data inside of there about behavior and usage. All these things are sort of ways to understand the preferences that customers have, and in some cases without adding any friction for the customer, right?
Yeah.
Without getting in their way at all.
If you don't, sometimes if you really understand your business and you understand what's possible, you can solve a problem they didn't know they had.
Right.
Like, it's a bigger problem. And by just changing the entire equation of how you do business, it's actually differentiated. It's hard to replicate. It's super valuable from the customer. And then you're known for something and people seek you out for that thing, versus having to go and do lead gen and knock on doors and trade shows. It's a more cost-effective way to do business, is to attract.
Definitely agree with you. Just a closing thought, Melanie, from you. I'd love to hear any books or speakers or resources that you want to recommend to me to check out, and for our audience to check out and learn.
Yeah, I think what really transformed a lot of my thinking, having gone through a career of being more creative in marketing, the thing that kind of put it into something that's a bit more tangible was a lot of this kind of strategy resources. So the two strategy I think are the go-to books are Play to Win by Roger Martin, who worked closely with A.G. Lafley at P&G, and we all know the success of that. And it's in a really executable framework that helps you ask really good challenging questions, allows you to think creatively outside the box and allow those people that like to do that. And then also a stage where your skeptics can come in and tell you all the ways that you're wrong, that then you can prove out whether that is a true reason to be skeptical or not, and then allows you to have attributable risk. So when you make a decision, you never eliminate all the risk, but at least you, as much as you can, eyes wide open. And then the other one is a guy by the name of Alex M.H. Smith, and he wrote the No BS strategy. And his LinkedIn is phenomenal. And I would say he simplifies strategy, particularly around finding the thing that is unique, and selling on that value of what you bring and the outcome of that, not necessarily on the widgets and how the widgets are made. He's phenomenal. And so I would recommend not only the book, but following him on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you. I need to read both of those. I'd heard of Playing to Win, but I still want to check out Alex M.H. Smith. And we'll link the resources in the episode description as well for people to check out. But Melanie, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I could feel your enthusiasm coming through the screen, and I think the weight of experience as well. And I hope that the audience can really learn some lessons from this one.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. It's always fun to talk about this stuff.
It is fun. It's fun for me as well. That's it for the CX Heroes podcast today. Be sure to like and subscribe and share this if you got any value at all. And we will see you next time.